Here is another interview question. Interviewer asks, count how many null values exist in a column. Sounds simple, but this question actually confuses a lot of developers because many people write count column and end up getting the wrong answer. The reason is that count behaves very differently when null values are involved. So let's break it down step by step. First, let's look at the table. We have a table called employees and the columns are employee ID, employee name and manager ID, and the data looks like this. Now look carefully at the manager ID column. For some employees it is null. That usually means those employees don't have a manager. In this table, Rahul has null manager ID. Priya also has null manager ID. So the total number of null values should be 2. Now let's see how we actually count them. First, let's look at the common mistake. Many candidates write something like select count manager ID from employees. At first, this looks correct, but when we run this query, SQL only counts the rows where manager ID is not null because count column ignores null value completely. So in this example, it would return 3, not 5, and definitely not 2. That's where many people get confused. So instead of relying on count column, we should explicitly filter the rows where the value is null. In SQL, we check null values using is null. So the logic becomes simple. First, filter the rows where manager ID is null. Then count those rows. Let's write the query. Select count star as null count from employees where manager ID is null. Now, when we run this, SQL filters only the rows where manager ID is null and then it counts them. So result becomes 2, which is correct answer. Now, sometimes interviewer asks a follow-up question. What if we want to count null values without filtering rows? For example, maybe we want to keep the full dataset and still count how many null value exists. In that case, we can use a case expression. Let's see how that works. Select sum, then case start. When manager ID is null, then 1, else 0, then case end. As null count from employees. Here what we are doing is simple. For every row where manager ID is null, we convert it into the number 1. For all other rows, we return 0. Then we add those numbers using sum. So the total becomes the number of null values. Now, it also important to remember the difference between these two. Count star count all rows and count column counts only non-null values. Understanding this difference is extremely important in SQL. One small real-world insight. Counting null value is very common in things like data quality checks, data warehouse pipelines, data cleaning tasks. Because null usually represents missing or incomplete data, and analysts often need to measure how much data is missing. So remember this, count column ignores null values. If you want to count null values, use isNull with count star or convert them using case logic.